Ethan, did you really think you could move in with us and bring your parents without even speaking to me? My voice wavered, but I couldn't tell if it was out of fury or just incredulity. Like water bursting through a dam I was unaware had formed. The words exploded out of me. My 6-year husband hardly raised his head from his laptop. My gut twisted at that uninterested look, and the half smile he's been wearing more and more recently. "You're overreacting, Sophia," he replied bluntly. "It's only temporary, short term." Like a slap across the face, the word kept repeating in my head. Every phrase pierced my nerves as I stood motionless. With a sharp yet trembling voice, I declared, "This isn't just any apartment. This is where I live. This is the house where my family resides." The house was a modest one-story home nestled in a peaceful neighborhood. It was nothing fancy, but to me, it was everything. My grandparents had infused their love into every corner of the place where I grew up. In the hopes that I would establish a tranquil existence here, they left it to me. I wanted our baby, Lucas, to grow up in a loving environment away from his domineering grandparents' icy gaze. At last, with a little smirk on his lips, Ethan looked up. "Let's be practical," he whispered. "You can't really stop this." That was a knife-like blow. I had to tell myself to breathe as my hands balled into fists. "Remember whose name appears on the deed?" I inquired in a firm yet quiet tone. I glanced at my husband and wondered about his true nature for the first time in years. My husband wouldn't have shrugged or slammed the lid of his laptop at me like this. Lucas stooped into the room, arms extended toward me, before he could reply. The stress was slightly relieved by his bright and innocent smile, which allowed me to catch my breath. I kissed his forehead as I picked him up. As though to bring me back to the present, he gripped the necklace I was wearing. My son, at least, was too young to sense the gravity of the situation. I tried to speak in a level voice as I said, "Ethan, the situation isn't right." But the pain was evident. "Your parents have never respected me or our way of life. What are you doing? Why now?" Ethan didn't give me a sidelong glance. "Sophia, they're family. You wouldn't comprehend." The word family itself felt like a slap. My family had been welcoming, encouraging, and compassionate. They had a little coffee shop in town where the air was full of laughter and the scent of cinnamon. The opposite was true for Ethan's parents, Margaret and Charles. They were icy, judgmental, and contemptuous. They had made it obvious that I wasn't good enough right from the start. "Avoid discussing family matters with me," I yelled, raising my voice. "Aside from making me feel alienated in my house, what else have your parents done? And now, without even asking, you want them to share our home?" Ethan shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "It's only temporary. They require a place to remain. How about me? How about our son?" My voice broke. "Lucas also resides here. Do you think it's beneficial for him to live with individuals who affect the cleanliness of every area they enter?" Ethan could have spoken, but his silence said louder. He had no intention of giving up. I came to the heartbreaking realization that this house, this dream of a happy family living together, was no longer ours. It was now a battlefield, somewhere I didn't feel visible or secure anymore. I found myself in a place where my voice held no significance. I blinked quickly to contain my emotions. I was unable to cry. I couldn't shed tears at that moment, not before him. I gave Lucas another gentle forehead kiss and made a solemn vow to keep him safe. From the confusion, from the command, his father had brought him into our shelter to fight a silent war. "There will be consequences, Ethan, if you proceed with your activities without my consent," I stated in a low but firm voice. I refused to be harassed at home. Ethan gave me a real look for the first time. A glimmer of surprise appeared in his eyes. He might have assumed I was bluffing. Perhaps he assumed that I would simply accept it as usual. However, I meant every word. I called this P. This was the only place where I felt safe. I was safe. I'd fight for it too. After giving Lucas to Ethan, I took my time making my way to my heart raced with dread, not terror. My heart to race. Before I could even get to the door, it flung open. My mother-in-law, Margaret, took over as if she were the owner. She did not smile or greet anyone. She did not smile or greet anyone. The aroma of vanilla and cinnamon that always lingered in the air with her powerful, artificial, and intrusive perfume. Charles, as expressionless as ever, followed her. He looked around as if he were taking stock, and then, as usual, he fixed me with a silent displeasure. The invasion started right away. Margaret gradually began to take over every square inch of my house over the course of the following few days. Without asking, she rearranged the kitchen, putting my favorite mugs in the back of the cupboard and swapping out my mother's old teapot for a gleaming department store monster. I didn't say anything at first. I reminded myself that I had to maintain harmony for Lucas's sake. But beyond our window, the tension thickened like sea fog sweeping up over the cliffs. The passive-aggressive remarks followed. I was pouring porridge for Lucas one morning when Margaret smirked and strolled into the kitchen. "This stuff?" "Eyeing the box," she said. She expressed her concern about the excessive consumption of sugar. "Nutrition is a real concern in our family. Perhaps you should research that. I tasted blood when I bit my Lexilent too hard." "Margaret, it's just cereal. Lucas is in good health." She gave a tongue click. "He wouldn't be waking up every night if he were truly healthy, would he?" My knuckles were white as I turned back to the sink. Margaret stormed in without knocking that night as I rocked Lucas to sleep under the gentle glow of his bedroom lamp. "Are you still unable to settle him?" With her arms folded, she spoke. "You're not doing it correctly. His pickiness makes sense. Icky." My voice was quiet yet strained as I looked up. "I'm trying my hardest." She smiled pityingly at me. "Perhaps your life would be more structured if you had a legitimate job. Discipline is not taught by playing at home all day long." I blinked back tears as I gazed at her. This is my home, and I felt compelled to yell at a visitor. "Don't enter my son's room." I did say, however, "Please respect our space." She gave a sharp, frigid laugh. "You're still holding on to that fantasy, aren't you, Sophia? Didn't Ethan tell you? It's not just your residence. I am also his mother. I am perfectly entitled to be here." I discovered her searching through Lucas's dresser drawers the following morning. "What are you doing?" I asked, attempting to maintain my composure. "Cleaning up. This space is a catastrophe." That was it. This was the final blow. "Leave," I murmured, my voice cracking. "Leave my son's room. Leave my house." Margaret slowly stood up and looked at me like a lion examining a wounded deer, amused. "This house?" She laughed as she spoke. "This is also Ethan's house, sweetie. He also asked us to stay." Before I could retract my words, I turned around and walked away, but I was burning inside. I was deceived. This deception was perpetrated not only by them, but also by Ethan, who had pledged to support and protect me. He was now standing behind them. Alternatively, he could have been standing below them, which would have been even more detrimental. The house I cherished, which used to be alive with the sounds of the waves breaking outside, the scent of my mother's baking, and my childhood laughter, had turned into a battleground. Lucas slept soundly next to me that night while I lay awake and stared at the ceiling. I'd had enough. I was still unsure of my course of action. I had no strategy. However, I promised myself one thing: they wouldn't step on me once more. I am not at home right now. My son's life is not in the hands of others. No more. I did something I hadn't done in a while the following morning. I grabbed my phone and dialed James, my older brother. My anchor had always been James. He used to hold my hand when I was afraid of thunderstorms as a child. He was my sane voice as an adult when everything else in my life seemed to be in disarray. His calm, soothing voice came across the speaker. "Sophia, what's happening?" I made no effort to suppress it. I trembled as I whispered, "James, I can't do this any longer. They have taken possession of everything. I no longer even feel like I own this house. I feel like I'm being ignored." A pause occurred. Then his speech fell into that steady, serene tone that usually gave me a sense of relief. "You need to advocate for yourself, Soph. You live here, your life. No one can erase you. This is only possible if you give them permission." His remarks struck a deep chord in me that I hadn't felt in years. His remarks ignited a silent fire within me. This is a recollection of who I was before I allowed others to determine my value. He was correct. I had been holding my tongue for too long, ignoring the situation, making justifications. Not anymore. I wasn't going to act frustrated this time, though. I would be intelligent, tactical. I put Lucas to bed that night, and then sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and began recording everything that had happened, including insults, invasions, and crossed lines. Margaret was critiquing my feeding of Lucas, rearranging the kitchen without requesting permission, bursting into his sleeping quarters. I am expressing opinions about my value as a wife, mother, and individual. She is acting as though my house is hers. I regained a part of myself with every line I wrote. I wasn't insane. I wasn't going overboard. These events had occurred, and they were incorrect. I watched over the coming days. I waited. I had a plan. Then, one evening, I entered the living room and stood in front of Ethan and Margaret, who were sitting there pretending everything was okay, and that they hadn't made my haven into a battlefield. Even though my heart was racing, I remained steady. I said, "We need to talk." Astonished by the tone of my words, Ethan looked up. "What is it?" I didn't blink as I looked into his eyes. "The matter concerns your parents. They have violated all of my boundaries. This behavior must end. Tonight." Margaret folded her arms and scoffed. "Oh, please, we have only attempted to assist, aid." I said it again, raising my voice. "Are you continually undermining me by treating me like an outsider in my house? This place has been transformed into a jail by you." Ethan moved apprehensively. He didn't think I would say this. "No more." With caution, he stated, "They are my parents." "We can't simply expel them," I interrupted him. "Then allow me to clarify. I call this place home." "They are visitors. Additionally, their stay here is over." Margaret spoke sharply as she leaned forward. "You wouldn't risk it." I looked over at her. My voice remained steady. "Observe me." There was silence in the room. Like an impending storm, an ultimatum hovered in the air. They would leave, or I would, and I wouldn't go away by myself. Everything they believed they could control would collapse if I took Lucas with me. Charles and Margaret started packing that evening. Margaret stopped at the door and shot me a final, venomous glance. "Sophia, you will regret this." But I felt no remorse when the door shut behind her. For the first time in weeks, I could feel air entering my lungs. I sensed the quiet that comes with calm, not stress, returning to my house. I turned to face the house I adored, and it was once more mine. Only me, Lucas, and the silent vow that I would never again allow myself to be obliterated. It seemed as though the house was finally breathing again during the strangely silent days after Margaret and Charles's departure. Tension had gone from the walls. The air was lighter. My feet felt more tolerant, even on the groaning floorboards. However, Ethan shifted. He wasn't shouting or starting arguments. No, he didn't speak. Chilly. He spoke in a hurried and distant manner. He seemed to lose something with each sentence. I initially believed that he might be lamenting the change. He was missing his parents. However, it didn't take long to discern that he was blaming me, accusing me of bringing harmony back to my house. I gave up attempting to win his approval. I gave Lucas all I had, and his laughter served as the greatest confirmation that I had made the correct decision. Lucas was stacking wooden blocks in the living room one evening after supper while I was cleaning the kitchen surfaces. Ethan then nonchalantly delivered the next hit as if it had never happened. "I'm heading out on a work trip. It can take a few weeks," where he did not specify. Didn't explain why. He said that without even glancing at me. I simply nodded. "All right. Have a safe journey." I also had a deep-seated feeling that I hadn't had in weeks. Relief. When he pulled out of the driveway the very next morning, I threw open the windows. I performed once more. Together with Lucas, I made cinnamon rolls, which filled the house with the aroma of home, safety, and warmth that I had associated with my early years. Thereafter, I started working. I put the kitchen back to its pre-Margaret invasion state. I put my mother's old teapot back in the middle of the shelf after dusting it clean. I hung the lace curtains in the dining room window after washing them. Every move was a silent affirmation. I own this. You cannot erase me. But I had no idea what was going to happen next. After Lucas had gone to bed one evening, I was cleaning up when I noticed that Ethan had left his laptop open on the kitchen island. I ought to have left. However, I didn't. It only takes a few clicks to get started. A few scrolls are required. Suddenly, everything was different. Emails, pictures, and receipts from hotels. He exchanged flirtatious messages, made plans for the night, and created memories with someone he had no right to make. The deception was not an isolated error. It was months of deceit, a full-fledged romance. My knees almost gave out. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe as I sat at the table and gazed at the computer, the light blazing into my eyes. He was unfaithful. He was secretly betraying us while I was struggling to keep our house intact and to keep our son safe. However, the experience was no longer just pain. Clarity was the key. And I was aware of my obligations. I called a lawyer the following day. I told her everything, including how Ethan had moved his parents in against our will, how they had ruined our life, and how I had been emotionally manipulated for months. And now, evidence of adultery has surfaced. She was straightforward and composed. We'll meticulously construct your case. You will be in control. I then gave a real estate agent a call. I said, I want to sell my house. She spoke in a startled tone. Are you certain? It's a significant choice. Never in my life have I been more certain of anything. I wasn't selling because I had lost. I wanted to start fresh, so I sold. I had dreamed about this house. However, treachery, demeaning remarks, and unwanted footfall had now tarnished its luster. I needed a fresh start for Lucas and me. Within a few days, bids started coming in. I carefully went over each one, my heart becoming more steady by the hour, and I felt a little more liberated with every message and every planned viewing. I was regaining control for the first time in years, not just surviving. I had not yet decided what the following chapter would entail. However, I was aware of this. I would never write my own story again. I knew it was time to leave home after everything had started, including the real estate agent, the lawyer, and the silent decisions that now seemed louder than any cry. This is not the same home where Ethan and I lived together. No. At home, before I ever entered my parents' bakery, I was welcomed by the familiar scent of sugar and sea air as I drove to the edge of Cannon Beach with Lucas in a tiny bag. Before I could rap on the door, my mother opened it. After glancing at me with watery eyes and shaking hands, she embraced me so tightly that I could feel my ribs pressing on her apron without saying a word. Lucas laughed while she held him. A second later, my dad approached quietly and put his hand on my shoulder. No lectures, no inquiries. Simply love. You have us no matter what, my mother muttered. You always will. I made a silent vow as I watched Lucas use a toy airplane to chase the wind that evening while I sat on the wraparound porch of the bakery. I'll keep that smile safe. I will do whatever it takes to keep that smile safe. Ethan had become accustomed to me being quiet, accommodating, and constantly apologizing, but I was no longer that person. The night I found out about the affair, that version of me had died. I was someone else now. I may not see this person again for years. Someone courageous. I was equally ready. Ethan's return day arrived sooner than I had anticipated. The door creaked open, and I heard the familiar jingle of keys. His voice sounded casual, as if nothing had changed. Hey, I've returned. I didn't care where it came from. I dried my hands on a towel, turned to face him, and left the kitchen. Calmly, I said, Ethan, we must speak. Confused, he blinked. You made the place different. What's happening? I said. I sold the house. We no longer own it. He chuckled uneasily. You're not serious. I'm not. The sale has taken place. Everything is in transition. He stopped smiling. You must tell me before you sell the house. I gave him a direct look. My name is on the deed. You have no right to protest after what I discovered on your laptop. He stopped. What do you mean exactly? Taking a folder from the counter, I placed it in front of him. It held emails, hotel confirmations, and printed messages. Your affair. I have all the necessary information. Ethan's face went white. He appeared ill for the first time, as if the lie had drained his lungs of all air. He muttered, It's not what you think. I gave a head shake. That's precisely what I believe. You betrayed me. You deceived us. He extended his hand to grab the folder, then dropped it. Avoid doing this, he said. We can make it right. I took a step back. We don't exist. I've filed for divorce. His gaze expanded. You're not kidding. Never have I been so serious. I set the divorce papers next to the folder on the table. He remained still, didn't say anything. He simply gazed as if he were witnessing a different, unrecognizable version of himself. Because the woman who had forgiven everything was out of his line of sight, He was staring at the woman when she eventually left. Sputtering, he tried to get better. I'll resist this. I'm going to battle for custody. For everything. You can attempt it, I quietly replied. However, I know the truth. The law is with me. And I have a cause to fight. Something more powerful than you can ever comprehend. The moment I left the room, he became incoherent. The weeks that followed developed steadily and unavoidably, like waves receding from the coast. Word spread throughout the community. People conversed at Cannon Beach, which was relatively small. Did the girl from the bakery and the golden boy who married her make a match? He is currently seen as the man who abandoned his family for a romantic relationship. Ethan's family made an effort to get in touch. Letters, voicemails. Please be understanding. I didn't respond. A few blocks away from my parents' bakery, Lucas and I moved into a comfortable rental. Sunlight, the aroma of freshly baked muffins, and Lucas's laughter at birds outside the window characterized the mornings. I worked at the bakery all day, wiping flour off Lucas's cheeks, kneading dough with my mom, and seeing the smiles on people's faces as they tried our cinnamon rolls. I used to sit on the porch at night with a cup of tea and slowly let go of the pain. Ethan had left, and so was the burden he carried. There is freedom in its stead. After the divorce became official, things began to calm down, but not for Ethan. The man who used to proudly walk the streets of Cannon Beach now shunned them as if they were skin-burning. The neighbors who had nodded courteously before suddenly turned aside. Like shadows, the whispers followed him. The marriage wasn't merely a failure. A public reckoning was held. And Charles and Margaret, his parents, the imposing presence they had formerly possessed had vanished. Now that the town had seen through their carefully cultivated facade, their quiet was more audible than before. No one visited their house anymore. The invitations ceased. The regard diminished. As we left the courthouse that day, I firmly grasped Lucas's hand. We didn't turn around. For the first time in a long time, the air seemed light, even though the sky was a gentle gray that afternoon. It wasn't over yet. This was the start. The house was sold to me. It was a place where hopes were once realized and then dashed. We no longer owned it. To be honest, we never really owned it. Above the bakery, Lucas and I found a comfortable apartment. It was the same bakery where I had watched my mother roll dough and joke with customers on many mornings when I was a youngster. It was our home now. We opened the shop early every morning. Lucas assisted me in sprinkling flour on the counter as I knotted his tiny apron. My parents warmly greeted every customer. And I discovered happiness once more in sunshine, in cinnamon, in simplicity. Ethan continued to disturb our tranquility. I heard a voice behind me one evening right after we had shut the bakery for the night. "Sophia, please," I pivoted. As he stood there, Ethan appeared to be a specter of the man I used to know, weary, hollow-eyed, and no longer polished or arrogant. His voice had lost its edge of confidence. He said, "I need to talk, please." Heart steady, I stood motionless. "What are you looking for?" Rubbing the back of his neck, he paused. "It has to do with child support. I can't keep up with the money. My financial situation is worsening." I crossed my arms. "Ethan, that is no longer my issue. You made decisions. You now reside with them." His speech was hardly audible as he turned away. "My folks have lost everything they owned. We have to sell the house. They are currently staying with a buddy." I felt nothing for a second. Not sympathy, not rage. There is nothing but emptiness. I said, "I'm sorry they lost what they had, but perhaps now they know what it's like to lose control." His eyes searched as he turned back to face me. "Sophia, let's preserve our history. We cherish the memories of our past." It nearly made me chuckle. The past? I recalled the silent tears I gulped. Lucas slept easily despite his father's neglect on the evenings I kept him all to myself. My son's room was filled with the scent of Margaret's perfume. I placed the betrayed folder on our kitchen table. I whispered, "You ought to have considered all of that before you broke your vows." I went inside the bakery, unlocked the door, and shut it firmly yet gently in his face. He came back a few days later. This time, his voice was more frantic. He declared, "I've lost everything. Who is the woman with whom I had an affair? And she left me, went out. I lost my job. My reputation has been damaged. I am lodging at a motel. I refused to give him the response he desired and stood at the counter, cleaning it. You still have options, I murmured without raising my gaze. It is up to you what to do with them now. He took a step toward her. I apologize, Sophia, he said. Lie. For everything. I did look at him this time. He was no longer the he never once hurt me. I wasn't even harmed by him once. Simply put, he was a stranger. He was a lost man in the midst of a life he had destroyed with his own hands. Own hands. And there wasn't any room left in mine for him. I whispered, Ethan, I hope you discover who you want to be, but we won't be on that journey. He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked back into the chilly nighttime air after giving a slow nod. I did not feel victorious when the door closed behind him. No resentment, just tranquility. Lucas glanced out of the corridor. Was that your father? I leaned over and gave him a hug. Yes, dear. However, Daddy is leaving. He gave a simple nod. All right. We resumed our hot cocoa making together. At last, my heart felt light enough to rise with the steam, which made me grin. It never occurred to me that I would witness Ethan in his entirety. At one point, he exuded confidence, charisma, and even admiration, as if the world owed him something. But now, standing amid the rubble he had created himself, he was merely a man devoid of all illusions. He returned one final time. He appeared to be a shell as he stood outside the bakery as the sun set, illuminating the peaceful village with lengthy shadows. His voice was no louder than the wind. His shoulders were hunched, and his eyes were exhausted. I have nothing left, Sophia, he said. Arms folded, I stood in the doorway, neither resentful nor angry. Simply determined, I answered. You still have your life. You. What do you do with it now? It now. He took a small step closer, as if there might still be anything worth preserving between us. He said, Can you help me, just once, for everything we used to be? I didn't see the man I loved when I looked at him. He was not the man who had deceived. There was a me, a stranger pleading for mercy, and I might have been able to offer it. Perhaps a piece of me would have. However, it is no longer the case, for I, myself, had already received grace. Ethan, I'm not the one who saves you anymore, I whispered softly. I am the one who ultimately decided to save myself. His expression was one of quiet loss, not one of rage, not in rage. Without saying another word, he turned and left, disappearing into the fog of the coast. I didn't thereafter again after that. After that, life did not immediately become ideal. However, it came to pass. It was mine. My mom and I opened the bakery every morning. Like a pulse, the bell above the door chimed. One by one, the aroma of fresh bread and cinnamon greeted the residents. My father made jokes with patrons. Lucas drew sketches of me, him, Grandma, and Grandpa while we were seated at the corner table. Constantly, he never added Ethan to his group. Ethan was never added by him. I didn't beg him to either. After we closed at night, I would enjoy a cup of tea while listening to the distant buzz of the ocean from the veranda. I would occasionally reflect on how near I was to losing myself, to being rendered invisible in a world governed by others' laws. However, those ideas were no longer painful. They served as a reminder of my progress. Lucas came running up to me one calm afternoon with a number of wildflowers he had collected from behind the bakery. He said, These are for you, Mommy, because you are my inspiration. I said, You're my reason, and went down to give him a deep hug. I had a profound realization at that same moment. I did more than just get by. I made a new one. I made a life that was strong, gentle, and purposeful. I found a place where I had a voice, where my limits were, where my youngster flourished. I didn't need to reread the novel. Ethan and his family were just a closed chapter. Yes, I did keep the memories. I no longer allow them to define me, though. Sometimes, people in town still wanted to know what had happened. I would simply say with a smile, I discovered how to return to myself. Since that is the reality, my name is Sophia. I used to be broken, betrayed, denigrated. Now, though, I am complete. I'm at home. And it doesn't end here. I'm just starting out. If you've ever thought your voice wasn't relevant, if you've ever felt inadequate in your house, I hope this narrative serves as a reminder that you are worthy of respect, tranquility, and the autonomy to pursue your pleasure. Sometimes, leaving is the strongest thing you will ever do, not a sign of weakness. I would love to know what you think. Have you ever had to regain your voice in a scenario like this? I read all of the comments, so please share your experience. It might make someone else feel less alone. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if this tale touched you. We can keep telling important stories like this one thanks to your support. You're not by yourself. You're not invisible. You underestimate your strength.